This is a problem. This is actually problem 1 from the homework. You have to graph y equals cosine of 3x, or at least you have to match the graph. Now let's take a look at y equals cosine x. Basically what happens, a cosine is really divided into 5 equal parts. So you start at 0, just think about the unit circle, then you go to pi over 2, then you are pi, then we have 3 pi over 2, and then the last one would be 2 pi. 2 pi is 1 full period of a cosine. The range of a cosine function goes from -1 to +1. And a cosine function starts at 1. So our first point would be 0, 1, right here. And then we go down to, 0, 1. Then we go down to pi over 2, comma 0. Then we have pi -1, 3 pi over 2, 0, and we go back up to 1. So 1 full period of a cosine looks like that. So if we have our general function y equals a cosine b of x, a would be considered the amplitude, and b is the number we need for the period. The period, which is 1 full rotation of a cosine function, is 2 pi over whatever b is. So if you look at cosine of 3x, you see that b is equal to 3. So that makes the period 2 pi over 3. So that basically is your endpoint. So then you look at the 3 graphs. So a cosine has a pattern. I always look at the y values. You start at 1. Then you go to 0, then you go to -1, then you go back to 0, and then you end up at 1 again. So if I look at this, I can clearly see that the correct graph in this case is B. B would be the correct graph. You see 2 pi over 3 right here. You see 1 full period. C is a sine function, and A is a cosine function that is being has a negative, so it's rotated across the x-axis. Here's one more problem where you have to choose the appropriate description of y equals 2 sine 4x minus 8. So the amplitude A, so if I have the general function, would be a sine bx plus c, and we may have AD. Now the A represents the amplitude, so when the amplitude's always positive, it's basically the distance from your maximum and your minimum. So in this case, A is 2. Now the period is 2 pi over b. Here we have b being 4. B is always a number in front of the x. So therefore my period is pi over 2. The phase shift, think back to college algebra, the transformation to the left or to the right, you take the parentheses and set it equal to 0 and solve for x. So you get 4x equals 8 divided by 4. That means x equals 2. So your phase shift is 2, your period is pi over 2, or 1/2 pi, and your amplitude is 2. The only possible answer here would be C.